News channel. Now, a corruption risk assessment by the Ghana Integrity Initiative, which evaluated the risk of corruption in government's intervention, revealed inadequate transparency with regard to the procurement processes related to the COVID-19 interventions rolled out by government. Now, the group argues that it's a revelation of opacity in the procurement processes regarding the COVID-19 interventions were further compounded by the inadequate publication and accessibility of procurement contracts by the people of Ghana. Well, in a statement to mark the African Union's Anti-Corruption Day, GII, the country, GII, which is, of course, the local chapter of Transparency International, says the country must take that opportunity to reflect and dialogue on strategies and mechanisms that it needs to take to enhance transparency and accountability in the management of COVID-19 funds. So let's bring you excerpts of that statement released by the Ghana Integrity Initiative. You have excerpts pointing out that the theme for this year's African Union Anti-Corruption Day, which is the strategies and mechanisms for the transparent management of COVID-19 funds, provides us with member states an opportunity to assess our strategies and mechanisms for safeguarding COVID-19 funds. As various corruption risk reports across the globe have revealed numerous procurement infractions in Ghana, GII's corruption risk assessment, or assessment, I should say, which evaluated the risk of corruption in government's intervention, revealed inadequate transparency with regards to the procurement processes related to COVID-19 interventions rolled out by governments. Now, the revelation of opacity, as the statement there on your screens is pointing out, says that in the procurement processes regarding the COVID-19 interventions was further compounded by inadequate publication and accessibility to procurement contracts by the people of Ghana. And you would obviously find that in later portions of that document. The GII is urging the people of Ghana to reflect on this day and use the opportunity to call for the enhancement of transparency with regard to the COVID-19 expenditure. Let's speak to Adam Senano, co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption, on the AU's Day Against Corruption. Adam, thank you so much for your time. Just a couple of weeks ago, the finance minister was in Parliament accounting to the people of Ghana how much has been used in terms of our COVID-19 funds. I guess that was enough to demonstrate that government is being transparent enough in trying to tell us the true state of affairs, isn't it?
Actually, as the GII report points out, the statement to Parliament handled the headline budget elements, so broad areas, cost centers, without providing much detail. And I mean, it was good enough as telling us what and where they send the funds to, but that was not a very worthwhile exercise in terms of accountability. So you need to go further than that in order to look at the issues of accountability.
When you say headline budgets, what's that exactly supposed to mean? Because if, for instance, the government says we've used, say, 2 million Ghana cedis on the procurement of nose mask, I'm not sure you'd want to know that the brand, the quality, or the type of nose mask that was procured by government. Why would you want to do that anyway?
You want to do that for accountability. Nose masks is a good place to start with. Who were given, which companies were given contracts? Did it follow standard procurement procedures? In other words, was there a tender? Did people bid? Did they have the competence to supply this? And on the basis of that competence were selected? Or do you find that 20% of those who were given contracts to supply nose masks had competencies, 80% were fresh companies, no expertise, nothing, and that also has implications. So yeah, headline broad doesn't tell you anything. The details begin to make you understand, is everything covered? And those who supplied it, did they have the capacity to do so? Was the pricing that was provided adequate in terms of what you expected in a market survey of average prices for this product? And so on and so forth. So you need much more detail to be able to say this was done in a very accountable manner.
And the redress available is demanding accountability. But the fear also of some experts is that you may find government agencies and the actors of government trying to hide under the fact that these were not normal times, and so the rules had to be breached some way, somehow. We've seen that play out, for instance, in the Sputnik botched deal. How about that? That may come up strongly, isn't it?
Well, no. I mean, the assumption that we are bound to accept that these were unique times and therefore it provided for you a basis to, as it were, breach procurement laws or processes, it's neither here nor there. That cannot be the case. It is not tangible. It is not acceptable. One is expected to still use the laid down processes and procedures, even in such times. And if you have to make an exception to the rule, there are procedures where you escalate issues for approval to be given for you to then go outside the existing law or process and then do procurement, etc. So there is absolutely no excuse if somebody is found to have breached procurement, not had the tender done, not had an open tender, giving it to people who they were related to as part of the company, so there's a conflict of interest, or you can check and find that the pricing was way above the market and there's really no basis for the pricing that eventually took the money at risk. So all those things are things that ought to be dug into in quite detail.
The Speaker of Parliament, as we speak, has directed the Finance Committee and the Health Committee, respectively, to try and collaborate so they could deal with the issues of lack of transparency and accountability with regard to the COVID-19 funds. Is that an appropriate measure that could mitigate the effects of bloated expenditure and some other issues of corruption-related matters with regard to the COVID-19 expenditure?
Well, I wouldn't even talk about mitigation. I mean, this is post fact. I mean, after the event, most of it anyway. But yes, Parliament is a good place to start. But from experience, it's always useful to have multiple agencies having an interest, looking at it from different angles and digging up the facts. Indeed, one of those agencies that we cannot avoid at this stage is the Auditor General. The Auditor General is supposed to have all the details over the past 2-3 years. So in Parliament, in its work, ought to be working with the Auditor General to get the facts of the matter in terms of the raw data in order to draw conclusions. It's likely that some of the Auditor General's teams have already been deployed to some of these entities and already have some of the information. So it's a good start, but we need other agencies also on board in order to be sure that all the theft has been covered and there are no angles or aspects of this matter that have not been, as it were, investigated.
I was just about getting to that, knowing that Daniel Yaodomelevu, for instance, signaled that he had instituted measures to start probing COVID-19 expenditure. How come that we've not heard from this Auditor General? I guess it even puts his leadership in that spotlight where a lot of people would want to know, well, you've occupied office for more than a year now. What have you done? Is that a fair demand from him?
You are absolutely right. A lot of red flags have been raised by the current Auditor General. I can't remember, it's Johnson something. Not following through on some of the very, very obvious areas that one was expecting to get some public statements made on their findings. And one of certainly was COVID-19, because it's been trending in the media, and the first or foremost agency in the country that ought to have taken a look at this, and then, as it were, advise the people of Ghana what's going on, what has gone on, whether everything is being done right. The Auditor General. So that's a very important question you've raised. And as you'd have noticed, I mean, I think it's Occupy Ghana who have said they would head to court if, for example, action on surcharges is not taken up. So civil society and other groups are beginning to take a very keen interest in the lack of action by the current Auditor General on matters that obviously if it were a Daniel Domlevo, would have been taken on board and would have had some statements, some public, highlighting of how things have been done so far in relation to COVID-19 funds.
The expectation from the citizen movement against corruption. What are we to expect in the coming days? At least today is the AU Day Against Corruption. The Ghana Integrity Initiative is asking for a reflection on how to enhance transparency in the governance process. What are we to expect from your own group in the coming days?
Well, now we are all part of a larger coalition, the Citizens Coalition, where there are several areas of governance we've been dissatisfied with. And so the larger coalition are looking at various things, including the issue of corruption itself, and GII is also part of that coalition. And wherever we have to make demands, we've seen a rapid decline in the focus of government on these matters. And so, yes, already Occupy Ghana has taken up the issue of the surcharges. The issue of the COVID-19 funds, GII, that's part of the coalition, is also raising it. In fact, it's funny, we tend to be part of each other's groupings on these matters.
Right.
So we're waiting to see how the Auditor General responds to the highlighting that nothing has been done on COVID-19. And if as a larger coalition we need to take further action, we'll do exactly that.
I'm grateful. Adam Senano, co-chair, Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Let's talk.